The Black Fleet. Humanity's best-kept secret. It is humanity's ultimate defense. It has never been needed in humanity's 400-year stint as an FTL-capable civilization on the galactic stage. Several wars have threatened the stability of the galaxy, but for the most part they were all resolved with a fairly low loss of life for Terra. Autonomous drones and automated defenses bore the brunt of losses caused by these conflicts. Terra had built many layers of defenses for itself and its colonies, from the lowest FTL sensor beacons in systems adjacent to colonized worlds, to defense drones that were fabricated and launched from drone hubs that rested in high orbit, to fleets of speedy strike vessels designed to launch quick attacks on enemies before beating a hasty retreat to the final ships of humanity's grand defense fleet. Massive carrier vessels launching thousands of manned fighters, battleships with the power to obliterate small moons with a full salvo, missile frigates that had engines designed to keep the vessels stationary against the immense backwards force of a full missile launch. Most races in the galaxy viewed humanity's military might with a healthy amount of trepidation. Humanity had been the heavy hitters of the last 5 galactic wars. Former enemies who'd survived to become friends told tales of humans' prowess in battle, the punishment their heavily armored ships could take, the seemingly impossible endurance they possessed, allowing for more sustained acceleration than any other species could dream of, just to achieve an ideal positioning in battle. But there was one story that had never been told, for no species had ever faced the Black Fleet. It rested in the void outside the galaxy, waiting for a summons that had never needed to be delivered. Only one individual truly knew of the Black Fleet's existence at any one time, the current Grand Admiral of the Grand Defense Fleet. Promotion to this highest military rank came with several caveats that no other position required. 1. The Admiral would never be allowed to retire. Their duty was service until death. 2. The position came with a unique set of installed artificial synapses far more advanced than any other soldier would ever see. And finally, they must at all times be in communication with the Black Fleet AI. This sentient program monitored the Black Fleet constantly, as well as utilizing the quantum-entangled processors in the Admiral's artificial synapses to be on standby for them to be able to summon the Black Fleet at a moment's notice. The AI was also responsible for the induction of new admirals, providing them information about the capabilities and location of the Black Fleet. In addition, the AI handled the termination of admirals past their prime and recovery of the implanted synapses. The Black Fleet had been constructed only 50 years after humanity discovered FTL travel. In some of the early explorations around the relatively abandoned area of the Milky Way humanity found itself in, a truly gargantuan orbital station had been found orbiting a star. It was the only thing in the system besides the star itself. Not even a stray chunk of asteroid was presently orbiting. The station was old. It had been abandoned when Sol had only just started to shine, far older than any species humanity would later come into contact with. Its discovery was very quickly covered up under the highest security levels of the fledgling unified Terra. When it was finally boarded and explored, its technology was advanced beyond compare. From the most basic light source to the most advanced fabricator, it confounded analysis and resisted explanation. What was found was capable of feats that stretched even the realms of humanity's extensive database of science fiction writings. For a long while, as humanity progressed further in, there were no control systems or consoles to be found. Eventually, only one single interface was discovered in the center of the station. Initial theories on how the interface functioned were impossible to test, due to how far beyond humanity's understanding the station was. In the end, one individual was chosen to try and use it, the then head of the military contingent assigned to the station's exploration. His name now lost to history. He approached the terminal with more trepidation than he thought it was possible to feel. His body was implanted with all sorts of sensors and computational devices designed to monitor every detail about him as he took this giant step into the unknown. It was all for naught, though, as the instant his hand came into contact with the interface, he vanished out of existence, taking the sensors and any data they may have recorded in that briefest of times with him into the ether. Within minutes, the whole station came alive with motion. Huge amounts of plasma were siphoned from the nearby star for energy and materials, as the contingent aboard the station began a hasty evacuation whilst having no idea what the station might do. By the time the 6 ships of the exploration contingent had reached a minimum safe distance from the station, the entire structure outshined the star behind it, as it completed whatever mysterious task it had started. It was 5 hours before the structure began to dim to a level that optical sensors and human eyes could resolve it without damage again. In that time, the sun had dimmed by several orders of magnitude and had lost 41% of its total mass. The scientists aboard the ships were clueless as to how it still maintained its cohesion under such radical changes, but it was assumed that the station was maintaining the star's cohesion through some unknown process. When the station finally reached the same ambient temperature it had sustained before the sudden rush of activity, a huge section of it peeled away and disgorged 141 ships. Each one of them was identical to the next down to the last atom, indistinguishable from one another by any sensors humanity possessed. Their black hulls were nigh on impossible to make out from the background of space, as they seemingly warped the light around themselves to stymie detection. What followed was the first contact with the Black Fleet AI, a text-only message coming through to the lead ship where the remainder of the military personnel served. It had no distinguishable origin source, as if it had been penned directly into the communication station's memory banks. 142 individuals required for full operation. Please provide. The Black Fleet ships hung in space between the station and the exploration contingent. A message inquiring what the people were required for was penned and placed in the communication station. The response came instantaneously, just as mysteriously delivered as the first. 141 individuals required for piloting, 1 individual required for leadership. The fastest ship present was tasked with returning to Terra and fetching the fleet admiral along with representatives of the Terran Council to decide what would be done. It took 3 months of study and communication before what had truly happened was determined. The man chosen to try and use the station's interface had been digitized and uploaded to the station, becoming the Black Fleet AI. Much of his humanity had been lost in the process, but enough remained to use the knowledge and technology of the station to design a fleet of ships, prompted by fear of what humanity might discover out in the universe. When the ships were finished, the AI was distributed amongst them so that its existence was guaranteed as long as at least 1 ship remained. The ships themselves were as advanced as the station itself, technologies far beyond any form of human comprehension. Engines that could move the ships from one place in the universe to another so fast it seemed to, on a surface level, break causality. There were weapons that could erase matter and energy from existence in an instant. Shields that could withstand the tidal forces of black holes, or allow the craft to pass through the heart of the fiercest stars. The fleet admiral had volunteered for the position of leader, and had received the blessings of the council representatives. But there was the question of the pilots, since the AI had made it clear in its communications that once a pilot was placed within a Black Fleet ship, they could never leave it. Eventually, the required amount of volunteers were found amongst the fleet's hardiest and most skilled pilots. When they were all assembled near the Black Fleet, and the admiral communicated that the pilots were ready, the individuals simply vanished from the ships they were on, presumably via some mechanism of the station. Their bodies were rematerialized on the Black Fleet ships before, having most of the now redundant parts removed. Gone were legs, arms, and most organs. Their brains were wired into the control systems of the ships. What was left of their bodies were genetically altered on a massive scale. They were immortal and regenerated any lost tissue almost instantly. Their reaction times were decreased to the point they appeared to be capable of precognition. An advanced chemical reactor provided for the organic needs the remaining tissue possessed, as their minds were subsumed into the ships. When the ships had first emerged from the station, the ships looked strange but comprehensible. But with consciousness operating them, they took on an otherworldly appearance. Space itself seemed to warp around them as the integration process went on. By the time they were fully integrated, the people aboard the exploration contingent ships couldn't bear to stare at them for too long, for their very presence was like an ominous harbinger of death. Only the fleet admiral seemed unaffected by their predatory emanations. A last communication, text only, came forth from the AI. The Black Fleet stands ready to defend humanity in a time of need. The admiral nodded before giving some unheard command. and every ship winked out of existence, transiting tens of thousands of light years away to wait in the intergalactic void for the signal that they were needed. The station, having completed its task, finally released the tortured sun from its grasp and allowed it to be free. Straight away it began to go supernova, and the ships of the exploration contingent barely had time to enter FTL away from the system before being swallowed. They had no way of knowing if the station survived the expansion because it was engulfed within the blast. When the ships had safely returned to Terra, there remained the issue of the people on the ships who knew of the series of events. To an individual, they all volunteered to undergo memory deletion under the watch of the Admiral, to ensure the secret would be kept. 7 individuals have since held the position of Admiral of the Black Fleet, each one knowing that they alone have the power to call upon it, should the need arise. Each one has hoped that they will not have to make that call. The galaxy would never be the same again once they were unleashed on an enemy that threatened humanity.